The one thing parents wish to avoid thinking about when they're going through a pregnancy is the concept of baby loss.
Mummy! Dada!
Whether that's a miscarriage, stillbirth, or neonatal, there is never a right time to talk about the death of a baby. But imagine you have lost your child. You are grieving. Your family and children are grieving. You're doom scrolling for any available services online. They keep pointing you back to the same charities. SANS, For Lewis, Aching Arms. But how do you explain the grief to your children when you can't wrap your head around it yourself? How do you tell them that their sibling isn't coming home? This is the Unspoken Mourning. According to Atalos, a UK-wide signposting service for bereaved families, there are over 2,000 listed services and resources, but there is no exact number for how many of these services are catered for families and siblings after a baby loss. In 2021, the UK Commission on Bereavement found huge gaps in support for bereaved people. This was exactly the case for me and my family. My name is Justine Sawford, and I lost my baby brother in 2022. I received counselling on 2 different occasions, while the rest of my family got none. As my mum explains, quite early on into the pregnancy, we realised that Charlie may be born with some issues.
When we went for the 20-week scan, we got told he had a heart condition. It wasn't properly grown. The tubes or something were the wrong way, I think. And at the time they said, we can either abort him now or carry on with the pregnancy. When he's born, we can do an operation straight on him to fix the heart, but he'll also have to have another operation, and that will be his life.
We were hopeful at first. Mum knew deep down that things may not work out, but there was this even bigger part of her that wanted to give Charlie a chance. And then the bad news turned worse.
At 35 weeks, I had this test done. Then they told me a week later that he had a condition called Pattas syndrome, which means he had an extra chromosome, 13th chromosome. But it meant that there's nothing that could happen once he was born. That was it. He'd just pass away.
Seed of hope still stayed with my mum, even after hearing about Charlie's condition. Despite being told that Charlie's heart could be weak, that he could have some extra limbs or even a cleft lip, my mum felt Charlie's determination to stay with us. She felt his little feet kicking away at any chance. She chose to induce her labour before Charlie's due date. On March 11th, 2022, my mum stayed overnight in hospital. Doctors ran new tests for her and the baby's well-being. And Charlie was born the next day at 10:30 at night. About 4 hours later, he passed away.
We didn't really have much time. It was like he was born. I was so giving birth, it's not the best sort of thing anyway. They pump you full of medication and that. So after giving birth, I was quite sleepy myself. So I got to have roughly about 4 hours probably with him till he did pass away. And it felt like nothing at all.
Charlie never came home. My parents, through their grief and disbelief, had to explain what had happened to our family.
My children all knew he had a heart condition. They all knew that was happening. Then as soon as we found out he had this other problem, we told them. It was really hard because, I don't even understand it myself. It was the first time I'd heard it, so try and tell someone else was harder. Then they all knew I'd be going into hospital, staying there to have Charlie, and sadly won't be bringing him back. They all knew what was going to happen. It was still quite hard because even though they all knew, I don't think it never really hit me until a couple of months later that, he'd passed. So I don't know how it felt for them.
And we weren't sure how to feel either. I decided not to name my siblings, but they still wanted to talk.
Nobody seemed to care, so I thought, well, if none of them care, I don't think anybody else would.
It was sad, and I didn't really know what was going on. And I just felt quite useless because I couldn't really help.
I only got the support I did because I kicked off at school after being forced to sit through a bereavement assembly, while my siblings got nothing. Even after my parents contacted the school for support, they only got the occasional check-in and a playgroup they felt left out in. My brother was 6 and my sister was 13 when we lost Charlie.
My head of year came and spoke to my form tutor, and the only thing that was said to me was, "Are you okay?" No context for why they were asking it, just, "How you doing? Are you okay?" Your emotions change daily, so for them to say once, "Am I okay?" and then never bring it up again, really hurts.
It felt like something was happening and I don't know what, but since it was all keeping to myself, while other people were laughing, having fun, I was stressing about all of it.
According to Northamptonshire-based charity, the Never Alone Project, it is estimated that 1 in 29 children will experience the loss of a family member at an early stage in their life. That is at least 1 child in every UK classroom. And yet, people shy away from talking about the loss, both the ones who are affected and the ones who could help them feel better. Don't talk about the death. If schools aren't accustomed to providing that support, then where can they find it? I wanted to reach out to other families in the area to find out if their children had similar experiences when they lost their sibling.
When we got the bad news, and we knew what decision we'd have to make, that weekend we decided to tell the children because they asked why we hadn't been picking them up from school. So I explained that we'd been in the hospital and they asked why. So I just explained that the baby in mummy's tummy we didn't know it was a boy at the time, but we said it is very poorly, so they need to take it out of mummy's tummy next week. And we didn't go into obviously too much detail. We tried to make it age appropriate and just said that he had a problem with his brain, and just explain that the brain is the engine of the body, and if it's not working properly, then nothing else will work properly.
That was Leanne Ruddle, mother to Ezra, who was a stillbirth baby born in October 2025. He suffered from hydrocephalus, which causes areas in the brain to become enlarged because of a build-up of spinal fluid. Leanne remembers how excited her 2 children were when they were first told that there'd be another addition to the family. Her son was overjoyed at the idea of being a big brother again.
I can still see his face, and I just remember feeling so bad for him because he just loves being a big brother.
Now all they have to remind themselves of Ezra is a teddy that was donated by Baby Lost Charity for Lewis. But Leanne believes that this is a good thing. Her children see the bear as an extension of Ezra, a cuddly toy that keeps the memory of their little brother alive with them.
The kids actually talk about Ezra quite freely and quite openly. We don't hammer it to them. They mention him when they want to talk about him, but I'm glad that they feel safe enough that they can talk about him when they said to the kids that when they're feeling sad or happy, or they want to share a story or connect with their brother, just to give these bears a hug, because Ezra's got the same bear. And that in between time from Ezra passing to his funeral, we actually took Ezra's bear with us everywhere, and we're like, let's let the bear see lots of things, and then he can tell Ezra when when they are reunited.
Leanne's approach to getting her children comfortable about talking through their grief is a common method recommended by many charities. We'll talk more about these charities and their focus on how to help a bereaved child shortly. This method is something that Leanne chose to do herself. No support from others, no charity-led thinking. Leanne chose to turn hers and her family's grief into something they shouldn't be ashamed of. This was a reoccurring theme when I spoke to other grieving families. There was very little advice given on how to discuss bereavement with children. However, they made the decision to discuss their sibling honestly in order to give them the time to grieve together. Diana, Taylor, and Carly still tried to talk about the babies they lost.
I only sort of talk about it unless it comes up naturally, and I think my approach to most things is try to do it in an age-appropriate way and as honestly as you can.
It's just what felt natural. And I've always looked at Robin's, never kind of said, oh, somebody's here. You know, obviously a lot of people have their grandparents or something that they've lost and they associate. And I never really have, but I just something about a Robin. And then once we'd lost her, the first little bird I saw was a little Robin. I'm like, oh, here she is.
I'm very, very comfortable in talking to them about him and very comfortable in them talking to me about him. They quite often catch me off guard, and then the moments you're like, well, I've never thought about it like that before. And yeah, but he's very much included, very much talked about.
Although these families are content with their approach to talk about baby loss with their children, one comment really stuck with me. Rob Crucell, who now works with a pre-eclampsia charity after losing his 39-week-old son Theo, believes the chances of getting help is luck-based.
For the years I've been campaigning and doing stuff like that, it really is a postcode lottery.
It was made very apparent to me that these families were never too sure if they had gotten the support they desperately needed, or had been left high and dry to cope alone. I decided to get in touch with some experts, midwives, charities and caregivers who have seen firsthand how people respond to grief and how their training plays in those scenarios. Similar to how our family spoke about their loss with their children, Carolyn stresses the importance of language when talking about death. Carolyn Rowbotham is trained as a bereavement midwife, but now holds the role as a child death review coordinator. She visits bereaved families across Northamptonshire to talk about sudden and expected deaths of under 18s within a family. But Carolyn's response is not something that was exactly taught to her or other midwives.
I suppose as a nurse and a midwife, you get a little bit of training on bereavement, but not very much. It's probably one lecture that I can remember. And then in this job, bereaved parents, which I find I learn the most from, what words to say, what words not to say, all of those sorts of things. So that's how I learn, really. I learn on the job.
But how do bereaved midwives view Rob's outlook of the support for grieving families?
Depending, not all hospitals have bereavement midwives, so potentially that could be correct. I think in Northamptonshire, I work really closely with the bereavement midwives, and having been a bereavement midwife, I know that there is that support there if families do want it. But I could imagine that there is a postcode lottery depending on where you live in the UK.
Carolyn explained that some individuals do not want further support from medical staff after a loss. It causes them so much pain to open up and talk about the death of the child they lost moments ago. Even building upon what we talked about earlier, some parents are overwhelmed with their emotions and the follow-up information that they forget to reach out for support until much later. That's where the baby loss charities come in. The two key baby loss charities that came up a lot in conversation were For Lewis and Aching Arms. These charities that I already knew due to the support they gave my family after we lost Charlie. I remember my mum and dad being gifted a memory box full of keepsakes of Charlie. His blanket, his cast prints of his hands, and a few cuddly bears. They sit on a designated shelf in the living room. But like Leanne's son, my youngest brother keeps these bears in his room to feel connected to Charlie. Kirsty Knight, co-founder of For Lewis, shared why these bears are so important, not just for the parents, but for their children too.
A lot of parents will contact us and say that they've got other children, and we actually send them their own bear. We have sibling packs that we do now as well, which have got various items from storybooks and activity books inside, but it also has a For Lewis bear for the sibling to have their own bear as well.
Kirsty's inspiration for these packs stemmed from her own children. After losing her son Lewis, Kirsty set up this charity to help other grieving families get those keepsakes. But when she had 3 more children, it became apparent that siblings needed a keepsake too.
My little girl actually inspired us to create our Siblings of Stars group, which is a child-led craft and support group where we hold a meeting once a month here in For Lewis. Children come together and we have various craft activities available for them to do. So it's not a case of sitting around in a circle and getting them to talk about their feelings. It's child-led, and it just supports them by being with other children who can understand.
Providing children a safe space that they can talk through their emotions whilst potentially doing activities they enjoy often leads to them feeling more comfortable about their grief. Forcing them to sit and talk about their emotions may prove to be more difficult if they are in a setting they do not find welcoming. Talking to Erica Stewart from Aching Arms helped to circle back round to our reoccurring theme of language. Although her charity does not offer direct support for children, she's often asked by families who need that extra guidance about how to talk to their child.
My guidance is always to be as open and honest as you can to a sibling, to your other children, and to, not to use kind of euphemisms like, they've gone to sleep or they're a star in the sky, and there's lots of books now that are really good for parents to read to their children at different ages that explain the concept of death.
So, from our bereaved family's perspective, their honesty has helped shape their children's grief into something much more positive. Both our midwife Carolyn and our counsellor Erica have made it clear that talking about a child's death in plain, simple words in an age-appropriate manner really allows them that time and space to really understand what has happened. But what do Erica and Kirsty think there needs to be more of to help these families mourn properly?
I think there needs to be a lot more support available for children in terms of counselling. There is a lot more needed.
I just think that there just needs to be more awareness and more, less of a taboo about talking about baby death and pregnancy loss, because it's something that does happen and is more common than people think.
The key issue when it comes to families receiving the care they need after losing a child is communication. If it was made clear for children that they can reach out to get access to these services, their grief journey would be easier. If midwives received more funding and training that could suit their response to a family loss, they could help ease that pain. If charities were made aware of what families were suffering and why, they could carry out what action is necessary to help them in their time of need. But this cannot happen if the subject of baby loss is ignored. I think my siblings' grief would have been so much easier if there was that communication. Children will remain to grieve for their siblings in silence if we do not allow them that space to talk about their emotions. Their stories and memories should not remain an unspoken mourning.